This is Brian, screenfiles.com in review. And what I'm looking at today is 2018's The Last Wish, directed by Timothy Woodward Jr. And this movie reminds me of something that I've typically taken for granted. Namely, a movie starts with a premise. For instance, let's look at Nightmare on Elm Street. The premise of that movie is when young people are asleep, an entity from their past kills them. Simple. In a sentence, you can get the premise across. Now the plot is more involved and expands upon that premise. The reason I mention this is that I'm not quite sure what The Last Wish's premise is. So the final wish begins with a murder. And a young woman finds someone who I assume is her father having killed her mother. That mother being Lynn Shay. The movie moves forward to a funeral for the father. Now keep in mind, based on the opening of this movie, the father is alive. Now he could have been killed. But I think it's incumbent upon the movie to show us when that happened. Because it did not happen in the opening. So I'm already confused. I'm going with it because it's interesting. But as I said, I don't quite know what's happening already. So we come to meet Aaron, who's trying to make his way in Chicago and not doing particularly well at it. He's a law school graduate, but it's not helping him get jobs. Something I am entirely familiar with. So he returns home to the funeral for his father. And as I mentioned earlier, Lynn Shay is now alive. And I am confused. Visually speaking, the movie is well done. It looks good. But as I said, I'm not sure what's happening and why it's happening. And as the movie progresses, I come to notice that the camera focuses on this particular item. It doesn't tell you why, though. It just keeps doing it. And I'm saying to myself, why is this happening? What's the relevance of that item, which the movie does not tell us? So events happen, and I don't know why anything is happening as it's happening. But we eventually come to learn that that item that was pictured earlier contains a jinn, which is essentially a Middle Eastern entity. It's a demon, like a genie. And it gives you 7 wishes. And after that 7th wish, it takes your soul. The problem is the movie doesn't establish any of this until later on. And not very well at that. So I'm trying to figure out why anything is happening. And I don't understand. And it's frustrating because of that. The movie is well shot. It has a few drone shots that aren't needed, but it seems like every other movie is throwing them in. But that initial premise is kind of knocked askew because the movie doesn't acknowledge anything. Now I get it. That to say that this movie revolves around a genie, essentially, might put some people off. I get that. But that's what scriptwriters are for. Their job is to make this stuff interesting. Not to abandon the effort entirely, which seems to happen with The Final Wish. It stars Lynn Shay, who is so excellent. And her performance, while good, is part of the reason why this movie confuses me. She comes off so angry at her son. Part of the reason for that anger, which I can understand, is that he went to Chicago and tried to make his own way, leaving her. The movie never quite explains how it is that her husband, who was alive at the opening, is suddenly dead. And what happens to, I assume, his sister? She just vanished from the movie. It's confusing. And events revolve around wishing them into being. But as I said, this is never established. So Aaron throughout the movie makes wishes. Like, I wish this person were this, I wish I could do that, whatever. But people do that all the time. So why suddenly being in proximity to this weird container, he's suddenly granted the ability to have his wishes come true? As I said, doesn't explain its premise very well. So things are happening and you don't know why they're happening. It's a frustrating movie. And it's worth mentioning also that Aaron has a cut above his lip. It's not at all big, but people can be vain. So I can understand him being very concerned about it, though it is the smallest thing. In fact, I would even wonder how it is he remembers it's there. It is that small and, to me, insignificant. But it means more to him, and he thinks of it almost as disfiguring. Or I should say the script thinks of this small mark on his upper lip as almost disfiguring. I can get that, to be totally honest. It's small, but it's not me. To a person who has such a mark on their face, perhaps I can see why they think that it makes them look unattractive. He gets into an auto accident, he's crossing the street and someone hits him, and he somehow wishes that he were, to be totally honest, I'm not sure what he wished to bring about this result. But in any case, they fix his face and the mark is gone. Once again, it was so insignificant to begin with. And the character doesn't really make it an issue. I mean, he notices it, but it's not like he's walking around with a bag on his face. So the idea that this is suddenly an issue that warrants the attention the movie gives it is weird. There is just not a lot that makes sense about this movie. Though Lin Shaye is excellent, as usual, Tony Todd has a cameo, and he's good. The problem with The Final Wish, by my reckoning, is that you shouldn't have to figure out what the premise of a movie is. Whether that premise is revealed at the beginning, in the middle, or wherever, you shouldn't have to guess it. And the narrative should be such that it draws you in while revealing to you that premise. The Final Wish doesn't really do that particularly well. It is a well-shot movie. The sound is good. It is oftentimes very well acted. It's just frustrating because it is not very well written and things don't make sense. Oh, another example. Aaron is trying to sleep and the neighbor's dog barks, as dogs are wont to do, which disturbs his rest. He wishes that, I think, the dog stopped barking, or the dog would shut up, something to that effect. Upon waking, it's discovered that the dog was killed. Now, never mind that that's kind of overkill. The movie doesn't establish that wishing means anything beyond the words themselves. And the thing is, you can establish that without having Aaron know about it. Just lay it out there somehow. Maybe someone stumbles upon a book. Maybe a character is online and he discovers information about this particular vessel. Something that gives the viewer an idea of what the premise of the movie is. Unfortunately, The Final Wish doesn't do that. As I said, it's frustrating to watch and irritating, mainly because the potential is there. It looks good. It sounds good. If it were just written better, it would be a significantly more interesting movie. Now, what do you think? This is Brian with screenfiles.com and review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.